Hi. Do you like bedtime stories? Do you like to read and listen to people read to you? Well, I'm going to read you some stories, and I'm going to put on a lot of different stories all around the world. My name is Gammy. My family calls me that, and that means Great Aunt Mary. So, you've come to the right channel. I'm going to read you a wonderful story. So please get under the covers, get snuggled up, and here we go. I'm starting out my book reading with a story from a man named Eric Carle. And I'm sure you've heard of him. Eric Carle is a famous artist and writer. He drew all his own pictures, and he specializes in watercolors, and they're paints that you mix with water. Put some water on your paintbrush and then a little bit of paint on the end of it, and you paint away. And you might know him from his very famous book, The Hungry Caterpillar. But I'm going to read you a story because it's summertime, and I'm going to read you a story that's got to do with summer. So here we go. It's called A House for Hermit Crab. And there's the cover, as you see. "Time to move," said Hermit Crab one day in January. "I've grown too big for this little shell." He had felt safe and snug in his shell, but now it was too snug. Hermit Crab stepped out of the shell and onto the floor of the ocean. But it was frightening not being in the open sea without a shell to hide in. "What if a big fish comes along and attacks me?" he thought. "I must find a new house soon." Early in February, Hermit Crab found just the house he was looking for. It was a big shell and strong. He moved right in. It felt just right. But it looks, well, so plain, thought Hermit Crab. And here's the big shell that he found. In March, Hermit Crab met some sea anemones. That's what these are, sea anemones. They're flowers under the ocean. They swayed gently back and forth in the water. "How beautiful you are," said Hermit Crab. "Would one of you be willing to come and live on my house? It is so plain, it needs you." "I'll come," whispered a small sea anemone. Gently, Hermit Crab picked it up with his claw and put it on his shell. And he's putting it right there on the shell. In April, Hermit Crab passed a flock of starfish moving slowly along the seafloor. "How handsome you are," said Hermit Crab. "Would one of you be willing to decorate my house?" "I would," signaled the little sea star. Carefully, Hermit Crab picked up this with his claw and put it on his house. And here he goes. He's picking up the sea star to put it on his house. In May, Hermit Crab discovered some coral. They were hard and didn't move. This is all the coral. "How pretty you are," said Hermit Crab. "Would one of you be willing to help make my house more beautiful?" "I would," creaked a crusty coral. Gingerly, Hermit Crab picked it up with his claw and placed it on his shell. Here he goes. He's putting it right on the shell. In June, Hermit Crab came to a group of snails crawling all over a rock on the ocean floor. See, here's all the snails. They grazed as they went, picking up algae and bits of debris. Now, algae is the food that they eat. And leaving a neat path behind them. "How tidy and hard-working you are," said Hermit Crab. "Would one of you be willing to come and help me clean my house?" "I would," offered one of the snails. Happily, Hermit Crab picked it up with his claw and placed it on his shell. And here he goes. He's picking up and putting it on the shell. Oh my. In July, Hermit Crab came upon several sea urchins. They had sharp, prickly needles. "How fierce you look," said Hermit Crab. Would one of you be willing to protect my house? I would, answered a spiky sea urchin. See, these are the sea urchins. Gratefully, Hermit Crab picked it up with his claw and placed it near his shell. In August, Hermit Crab and his friends wandered onto a forest of seaweed. It's so dark here, thought Hermit Crab. How dim it is, murmured the sea anemone. How gloomy it is, whispered the starfish. How murky it is, complained the coral. I can't see, said the snail. It's like a nightmare. It's like nighttime, cried the sea urchin. Look at these fish, they're all lit up. In September, Hermit Crab spotted a school of lanternfish darting through the dark water. How bright you are, said Hermit Crab. Would one of you be willing to light up our house? I would, replied one lanternfish, and it swam over near the shell. He's swimming over, right over around here. In October, Hermit Crab approached a pile of smooth pebbles. How sturdy you are, said Hermit Crab. Would you mind if I rearranged you? Not at all, answered the pebbles. Hermit Crab had picked them up one by one with his claw and built a wall around his shell. Now my house is perfect, cheered Hermit Crab. But in November, Hermit Crab felt that his shell seemed a bit too small. Little by little, over the year, Hermit Crab had grown, but he had come to love his friends, and he had to find a bigger house. The sea anemone, the starfish, the coral, the sea urchin, the snail, the lanternfish, and even the smooth pebbles were his friends. They have been so good to me, thought Hermit Crab. They are like a family. How can I ever leave them? In December, a smaller Hermit Crab passed by. I have outgrown my shell, she said. Would you know of a place for me? I have outgrown my house, too, answered Hermit Crab. I must move on. You are welcome to live here, but you must promise to be a good friend to my friends. I promise, said the little crab. The following January, Hermit Crab stepped out of the little crab, moved in. Couldn't stay in that little shell forever, said Hermit Crab as he waved goodbye. The ocean floor looked wider than he had remembered. But Hermit Crab wasn't afraid. Soon he spied the perfect house, a big empty shell. It looked, well, a little plain, but look at this big shell. Wow. Sponges, he thought, barnacles, clownfish, sand dollars, electric eels. Oh, there are so many possibilities. I can't wait to get started. The end. That was a great story, and it's a good story to learn about in the summertime because it talks about all of the different things you can find in the ocean, from sea anemones to hermit crabs, to seaweed, to starfish. You can find lots of things, and if you really like to go to the beach, if you walk along the sand right by the ocean floor where the ocean meets the sand, you might find something very special called sea glass. Sea glass is from broken glass that has been out in the ocean for a long time, and it tumbles around and it gets very smooth and it's very pretty. So if you're lucky, you'll catch a nice piece of green or blue or white or even brown sea glass. Well, I hope you liked my story on The House for Hermit Crab by Eric Carle. Tune in next week when I am going to give you another story about another place in this fabulous world that we live in. Bye for now. Love, Gammy.